Welcome into the Take the North podcast presented by Odyssey. I am Dan Wiederer, joined again today by friend of the podcast, second time guest, Kevin Fishbain, who is doing back-to-back episodes with us this week. Our good buddy Mark Grote is off getting some orthodontic work done at his advanced age. So good for Grote of going to get that taken care of here. And Kev, you're back. You're back to share more insight, more memories. We'll put you in the hot tub time machine, cold tub time machine. I'm sorry. That's what we call it here on the podcast, and we'll go down memory lane a little bit. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that the listeners and everybody who heard the first episode wanted me back. So thank you to the Take the North fans.
Thanks for coming back so quickly. Thanks for coming back in obviously the same hat and shirt that you wore the other day when you were on with us, as I did too. It's kind of our team uniform now for our podcast. Before we get back into the Bears conversation, I did want to highlight some of the work you've been doing. And the Breaking In podcast, something you launched in April. I was impressed the other day at realizing how many episodes I still had to catch up on because you've been churning out a lot of them since April. I think you're maybe up to 14 or 15 now of guests. And tell our listeners who would love some crossover work here about what the podcast is. And then I've got a pretty good, impressive list of guests that you've already had on.
Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Breaking In with Kevin Fishbain, a podcast that I actually workshopped and told Dan Wiederer about one day, and I got your seal of approval, so I was able to go forward with it, where I interview sports media personalities and ask them about their origin stories. What was your first job? What was your first internship? What were the things you did? It's been really fun because I've gotten some people on who, even people like Courtney Cronin was a guest. And we know Courtney very well from the media room. I had no idea some of the things that she did early on in her career to break in. And I think for a lot of people in the industry, it's been fun for them to hear those stories. And I think for a lot of people who are trying to break in, do you see what I did there, Dan?
I do.
Yeah, they've enjoyed it as we are speaking. The episode this week is Tyler Kepner, who's my colleague at The Athletic. He's a phenomenal Major League Baseball writer, was at the New York Times for 23 seasons. He had a cool story, Dan, where he actually was literally making baseball magazines like in his house and mailing them to people when he was 14 years old.
Wow.
And so that was pretty cool. And we've got I've got some I think I've got some heavy hitters that are going to be joining for the football season, which will be really cool. And
the art of the tease, I love it.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Subscribe, Breaking In with Kevin Fishbain on all your podcast apps. I'm on YouTube as well. It's on Instagram. So it's been a fun little passion project. And Dan, you will be on at some point. I'm gonna have Mark. And actually, I told Grote this, that I listened to an episode of Lawrence Holmes' podcast with Mark Grote about 7 years ago, and it really stuck with me. I mean, Mark's got a really great story, and it was one of the stories kind of floating in my head as I thought about this podcast idea. So Grote indirectly,
that's great.
Help put this together. So Mark Potash has had his episode.
Yes. And listen, like, we love Mark Potash, right? And like, he's got great, unbelievable, unique sense of humor and ability to razz people on social media. But Mark's got a way of sort of describing his own ambitions in the business and approaching the profession in a way that, like, it really resonated with me listening to him and being like, man, like I've always admired that dude, and I admire him even more, like, just hearing his philosophy on things. And that's what I think is so great for our audience to go over and listen to that. It's a great listen because you get little snapshots of people and what fuels them and what ambition looks like and how they find their ways through obstacles. And I think it just kind of crosses over into any career you're in, but it's really cool because they're people, it looked like you came out swinging. You had Peter King very early on, Nicole Auerbach, David Aldridge, Jason Stark. I mean, these are some names. Emily Kaplan, recently Adam Amin on there, who obviously people here in Chicago know very well. So it's fascinating stuff.
Thank you. And Adam Amin, he's going to be the voice of the Bears preseason, and I'm sure he's going to get a few Bears games on Fox, and obviously the voice of the Chicago Bulls. He was very open about how challenging his first job was, and just finding a way to get that job, trying to get the most out of it, and getting to the next job. So, and I'll tell you this, I'm not going to say who it is, but there is a very, very, very well-known reporter whose episode will run probably in September, and I interviewed this person. They said they applied to 300 jobs and heard back from 2.
Wow.
And it's just an example. And again, goes for any industry you're in. It's just so many lessons. I think Courtney and her just talked about going to Kinko's and mailing out DVDs of herself. It's been fun. So yeah, people can listen. If you have ideas of people you want on there, you can let me know. And Dan, when we go off the air, I'm going to tell you who next week's episode is, and you're going to be really
Excellent.
excited.
Just so you're aware, my appearance fee is going way up
Of
in the
course.
back half of 2025. So I'll get you with my people, and we can negotiate what that's got to look like before I go on. No, just kidding. That's obviously going to be fun to do, and it's been great. We'll transition into the Bears a little bit because I do think there is a lot of storylines facing this team as they walk into training camp that are kind of fascinating to consider, and also a little bit under the radar because all the focus is on Ben and Caleb. We had a discussion in our last episode about Ben and Caleb and their synergy and what that's going to look like and how it needs to evolve for the Bears to go places. But there are so many undercurrents to the entire drive of where the Bears want to go in 2025 that are worth exploring. And so I did want to ask you about the defense here, because I think that Dennis Allen's arrival is fascinating. Like, this isn't necessarily Vic Fangio as a carryover from John Fox's staff to Matt Nagy's staff in 2018. But you've got an accomplished guy that can run the show and is vowing to run it in a very specific way. And I'm just curious out of the gates what you want to learn about Dennis Allen, what you want to learn about Dennis Allen's Bears defense in the 6 weeks that we'll spend in July and August watching practice out at Haugh.
Yeah, I mean, he very much is going to be the head coach of the defense. And I think, like, you looked at the possibilities who Ben Johnson could have been brought in. I don't think you could be disappointed with him. I mean, the accolades are there, the resume is there. And just because the head coaching record might not have been sparkling, I don't think it takes away from what he's done as a defense. And I'm just, you always hear Dan coaches come in and say, my defense is going to be aggressive. We're going to punch you in the mouth and we're going to do all this. And, like, you talk about the man defense that we'll see, and it's going to be different than what you're used to with what you were used to the last couple of years. You're going to see some things up front. They're going to be different. But again, these are words we hear from coaches with Dennis Allen. Like, you've got examples of it in New Orleans and with the Raiders and other stops he's been. And I want to see what it looks like. I think that, like, there is a lot of talent on that side of the football. And what does aggressive, in your face, unique, what was the word that Montez Sweat used that I felt like he regretted using? Like, did he say like unusual? Or he said something about, it came off like he was talking about Dennis Allen, but we in the room
I know
knew
what you're saying. Yeah, I
he
can't
was talking
remember the
about, like,
specific word,
the
but
defense just knew it.
it got plucked and it got kind of spun into a
Yes.
different thing than what Montez was trying to say.
Right. I think he was just kind of say, like, this is different. It's unique. And I want to see, every coach says that, but how does his actually look? And I think that it could be really fun when you think about the physical talents he's got on that side of the ball.
Well, look, like he volunteered that, like, he sees a hybrid role for Kyler Gordon, right? Like, he talked about Kyler Gordon potentially going to the back end of the defense and doing some safety things and becoming this chess piece and this, guy that you can use in various ways. And so you want to see the creativity, you want to see the aggressiveness, you want to see a pass rush, right? And so that was the other guy I wanted to ask you about, because I think under the radar for a long time since March has been Dayo Odeyingbo. They invested in Dayo Odeyingbo to be a difference maker. This isn't just we'll see what happens type of signing. It's we believe you can be an impact starter for 15 to 17 games of the regular season, and we want to see it. And I know you've done some work on Dayo and his arrival and where he's going. What are your expectations for him, and where would you set a bar for what he needs to do to make the contract worthwhile?
Yeah. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. Somebody that, like, in high school was just this tall, skinny guy whose brother was really good at football, and then he got kind of plucked to go play and became a star. He could have gone to a lot of different places, but wanted to go with his brother to Vanderbilt. Cared a lot about academics. Played on a team that won 0 games. Played well and got drafted, I
Yeah.
believe, in the second round. He's one of those people that, like, again, I got a chance to talk to some of his coaches from early in his career, and, like, Dan, you do this. We all do this. We're like, when you talk to coaches of guys in high school and college, they're not going to say anything bad for the most part. Or certainly, if they have anything bad to say, they're not going to tell you on the record.
Sure.
But you just felt with him that there was Derek Mason, who is coach at Vanderbilt, just talking about the look in his eye that he has. And actually, Well, bringing Mark Grote here, as not like literally, but we're gonna bring him his Grote asked at so the Bears introduced Dayo Odeyingbo and was it Odeyingbo, Jarrett, Tooney, and Dahlman all in the same day or something like
They
that?
were back-to-back days. I
Or they're
don't
2
remember the
days.
order that they went. I think Tooney and Grady were first. It was Jonah
Right.
Jackson, and then it was Dahlman and Odeyingbo the next day.
Okay. So Ryan Poles is up to he took questions first, and Odeyingbo's in the room. And it was
Mhm.
Grote who asked a great question about Odeyingbo's lack of sack production. And
2
I
polls.
yes, and I couldn't help but kinda take a side eye, like and you could like, Odeyingbo didn't move, but you could just tell that he heard that question. I
Sure.
don't think he's gonna throw Grote out of the room. I think he understands it, and he and I talked about it. He knows that, like, sack production is, that's the ticket, but the key for him and the Bears I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's gonna be the pressures. Like, if you look at pressures, they're high, but, like, you need to translate those into sacks. You gotta get the quarterback on the ground. You got to
Right.
if you're getting there, get the ball out. If you're getting there, knock down a pass. All those different things. So, he has I was we was one of those guys, Dan, he walked in the room and you're like, whoa, like he is massive. So,
Yeah.
okay, how does that translate on the field? So I think there's a lot to like about his personality, taking a shot on a guy who might not have had the sacks last year. He's overcome some injuries. I'm intrigued by him, but I get the concern of a lot of money without a huge resume and who's behind him.
Right.
Like
Right.
I don't know if that's telling us that they believe so strongly in him and Montez Sweat, and then what Grady Jarrett and Javon Dexter are gonna be able to do for you, and then Shamar Turner. But like there is a drop off right now, unless some of these guys behind him have a great summer. And that's an interesting kind of another angle to the pressure that is on him to live up to that deal.
It's just crazy because when you sign edge rushers, it's particularly to these types of deals, you expect impact, right? And like that is what you are paying them to give is impact. It's not just like the occasional contribution, it's impact. And that's where I think Montez Sweat's 2024 season was so disappointing is you paid him to be a guy that affects every quarter of a football game. And he did not do that in 2024. And now whatever physical issues were limiting him or whatever other factors were involved in that is kind of moot because it just doesn't matter. You need to provide a return on investment. Odeyingbo is not quite the investment that Montez Sweat is, but you do expect to feel him in every football game, right? Like, I mean, that has to be a sort of prerequisite to that being a successful addition.
He was one of those guys who it felt like as free agency was about to open up, and you and I know that sometimes these messages come out from biased sources, but like he did seem to be that guy like, hey, no one's talking about Dio Dangbo, but there's a lot of teams
A lot
interested
of
in
buzz.
him. And
Yeah.
I try not to fall for the idea that like people will think that the Bears overpaid. First of all, I don't think there's such thing. I think every free agent is theoretically an overpay. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? That's just how it works.
First wave guys for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. So, but like I try not to think that like what they give him 16 a year.
I think that's it.
I
I don't
tr-
have it in front of me.
I try not to sit there and be like, "Oh, nobody else was even offering him 12. What were they thinking?" Like, obviously there were teams that were involved and they had to do what they had to do to get him. But you're right. Like in that position, you have to affect the quarterback constantly. And be felt. I mean, we felt that from Montez when he got here. The Tez effect
Yeah.
was in play for that month
It was a
in
6-week story,
2023.
the Tez
It
effect.
was
Yeah.
and it was really cool. I mean, it was really fun to watch. And I mean, you and I got to see Khalil do stuff like that,
Yep.
where he just wrecked games. And
Yep.
Montez did that for a couple games, like where he was just everywhere. And I think the hope is not only does Odeyingbo have to be good himself, but can he be good enough to help Montez? And this is also, Dan, where the Grady Jarrett factor comes in.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
how good is Grady Jarrett going to be, and what does that do for everybody on the line? Do you move Jervon outside here and there? Dangbo can move inside. What are you doing with Shamar Turner? What's he going to bring? So I've said this for a couple years that the Bears need to get to a point where they have 8 guys that can rotate in that defensive line. It's what Philly does. It's what some of
Yeah.
these really good teams are able to do, and the Bears just haven't had the horses,
That's how
and
you
they're
give
close.
teeth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're close. Again, who's that third edge rusher? How good is Odeyingbo going to be? How quickly does Shamar Turner get into their rotation? But like you want to see them get there so that they can do some of the things that some of these other defenses can.
By the way, you were correct. 16 million AAV for Dayo Odeyingbo, 3-year, $48 million deal that he signed in March. If we're going back to the word that Montez Sweat used to describe Dennis Allen, it was quote unquote complex. So that was the one where it was like, okay, that's what we're looking at. By the way, Grady Jarrett plays and talks with the kind of juice that this here writer and podcaster loves. I may have to do an entire episode on Grady Jarrett at some point, because I think that dude's going to be a fun guy to be around in camp as we get to know a little bit more about him. I'm going to shift you to the offensive side of the ball here, because I think as we try to envision the elevation of Caleb Williams, it has to be married up with a really productive running game. And I think Ben Johnson has made that clear that that's going to be a priority, that the play action passing game is going to feed off that. The running backs room is not entirely settled, and we've got a group here with Swift and Roschon and Kyle Monangai, and maybe even Ian Wheeler gets back into the mix if he can have a camp, that you're trying to figure out what it looks like. So particularly in a training camp where the running game is often hard to decipher, how do you wrap your brains around what they have and what they'll want to use once they start getting into games that matter?
I'm very excited for Kyle Monangai's first 50-yard touchdown run in camp that everyone goes wild about.
Yep.
But there's no such thing as really like a 50-yard run in camp.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, but we see a lot of them. But it's kind of like sometimes you can tell if it was legit. But there's two ways I look at this running back room, Dan. If you want me, I'll go full. I'll go glass half full here. Swift got paid a lot of money. When the Bears wins last year, he had some and shoot, even the losses, the Washington loss and the Green Bay loss at home, he had some huge plays where you're like, okay, this is what they paid for.
Yep.
So that's there. And then you bring in Ben Johnson, who's familiar with him. Does that pairing get more out of him?
And Bieniemy, right?
Yeah, right. That the right coach, you would think, for that situation. Roschon Johnson. I joked about this the other day. Do you remember when Roschon was drafted?
Oh,
the things that were said about him.
Oh yeah, it wasn't just a brochure.
Yeah, and it wasn't just in Haugh Hall. If you reached out to people around the league, everybody loved the guy.
Tashard Choice, his running backs coach, right? Everyone was singing his praises.
Okay, so when he is healthy and utilized properly, which it certainly seemed like he wasn't, does he live up to that? And then you have Monangai, who, I liked watching him in college. I thought that was a great pick in that round. What does he bring? So that's one side of it. The other side is you saw DeAndre Swift last year. You saw the first down runs were some of the worst in the league. Roschon, what are we still looking for? What is there? Yeah. And there's a reason Kyle Monangai dropped to 7th round.
Right.
So now you wrote about this, I believe, right after the draft, about the whole running back situation, because the Bears were obviously very interested in some guys in some of the early rounds and just didn't work out. That's just, you can't control everything in the draft. So how confident can they really be in this group either? So I see this, it can go a lot of different ways. I think so much of it depends on Bieniemy and Declan Doyle and Ben Johnson looking at these guys' skill sets and how can we get the most out of them?
And figuring out that interior of the line in a way that gets the most out of them as well, because that investment is supposed to bring that out of there. But I think it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch the evolution of how those guys operate and what the Bears think of them. And it's one of those position groups where you're like, yeah, man, if you want to just dial in on one group for 5 weeks, that one's going to be interesting to learn a lot about. Another one that's going to be interesting to learn about is the quarterback position, because there's 2 other guys not named Caleb that are going to be battling for a backup job. And they're both awesome to talk to. Case Keenum, the newcomer, the veteran, and Tyson Bagent, who's now entering year 3. There's a legitimate QB2 battle here, it appears. And I don't know what the right answer is here, right? I'm curious your perspective on how we kind of sift through that, and whether, it seems like they're for sure going to keep 3 on the 53 unless they decide they don't want to, which would be a pivot that none of us would expect.
Yeah, I still have been a firm believer all spring and summer that Tyson Bagent wins that number 2 job. It's just hard for me to think that he relinquishes that with the way he's going to continue to improve. the question is going to be, Case Keenum's experience level and Tyson Bagent's lack of experience and what that looks like in the preseason games and in camp practices. Like, does it apparent? But Tyson Bagent's not the type of guy that you watch and be like, oh God, this guy is just has no experience. He never has looked like that since the day he walked in. So I still think, but I mean, having Case Keenum as your number 3 in the room, all due respect to Tyler Bray, this is a lot different than having like Tyler Bray, who was kind of a practice squad guy. And the Bears have had other number 3s who have, but like Case Keenum's a legitimate guy who's got a lot of experience. He's been in playoff games. Like, having him in the room, I think is going to be so helpful, even if he doesn't win the backup quarterback job.
And he just feels, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but almost comfortable and energized to be here, right? From the limited time that we've talked to him, you just sense that like this isn't one of those like, oh man, I just signed here to make a little extra money and I don't really feel like I'm in a good spot. It felt like between the bond he has with Ben Johnson, the understanding of what that role is for a quarterback like Caleb, having done it with CJ Stroud, that there's just a confidence about how he's going to operate because he feels so comfortable and energized.
And don't you like, Dan, that he and Ben Johnson like had no connection?
Yeah,
like, I kind of liked that.
And
like,
it just clicked.
Yeah, that it clicked, and that he wanted to be part of this. Like, he knows he could end up being the number 3 quarterback.
Yeah,
like, he saw the depth chart. He did his research. I like that he wanted to be here, and it wasn't some like, oh, I coached you for 3 years. You're just my guy who knows my offense. Like, I kind of like that. That's how they ended up coming together.
Remember when Mark Sanchez signed here to be the number 2 behind Mike Glennon, and a couple weeks later he was like, "Oh crap, they want me to be the number 3 and just be kind of a teacher here."
And now he's in the booth with Adam Amin, who was a guest on Breaking In with Kevin Fishbain.
There you go. So Mark Sanchez is your next guest, is what you're telling me.
Add
it to the list, right? So that's gonna lead me into the cold tub time machine. I keep calling it the hot tub time machine. It's the summer. I feel like I need to be in a hot tub. It's cold tub time machine here. And we talked on our last episode about Bourbonnais, and so I thought this would be a good time for us to kind of unpack the fun of Bourbonnais and what it was for however many years. How many years were we there together? I guess you were there.
I was there
13.
1 more year than you.
Yeah, I didn't start in 13 until the regular season began and they were out of Bourbonnais.
7. I got 7 years and you got 6.
6 years. It felt like 30. we were down there a lot. And so here were a couple things I was going to throw at you. Like if you were crafting the perfect Bourbonnais day, you've got to pick an eating venue. You've got to pick a player that you wanted to interview, and then a player that you wanted to watch on the practice field. You can take this any direction you want to go, but like let's start there, and we'll kind of branch out from there.
All right, I'm gonna vamp for a second. That's because I need to pull up what the brunch place was called.
Oh, Yolks and Berries, probably. Was that,
Is that it? Yolks and Berries. Okay, so the perfect day starts in the Fairfield Inn lobby.
Yeah, of course, it always does.
just to get your day started. You go to Yolks and Berries for a good brunch. At practice, you said it was player I want to watch.
Player I want to watch, and then player you want to spend a significant amount of time after practice talking to.
Okay, here's a crazy answer to player I want to watch. You ready for this?
Oh, I'm so ready.
I kind of liked, and there was so few practices where you could say this. It was kind of fun watching Kevin White before he like.
Well, not his first year. That was the year where it was like, where's Kevin? Oh, he's not here. He's day to day. Oh, he's going to miss the whole year.
When he came back. Like in 2017. That was kind of fun. No, I would say Tanner Gentry, I think is the obvious answer.
Well, that's another one of those camp darlings, the Tanner Gentry, Daniel Braverman run around and get crazy kind of thing.
Okay, you know who looked really good when we were in Bourbonnais? Mitch Trubisky.
All right. Well, not 19.
Not 2019, but 2017 when he was the rookie. I feel like you were with me actually interviewing a veteran player in the tent in 17 after practice. Remember when Mitch was the number 3? And like,
tell me it was Marcus Wheaton.
It was not Marcus Wheaton. It was a defensive player, and his eyes went wide, and he was like, "You guys see the rookie? Did you guys see those throws?" And then we were like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "This isn't on the record," like because you could tell like they wanted,
like,
they didn't want to talk up him, but like that was like, oh, like he's looking pretty good. For some reason that just pops in my mind. I wanted to mention this on our previous episode. Do you remember the guy from Olivet Nazarene who would come by and be like, "Yeah, we've got 13,000 fans here today," and we all just
Oh yeah.
took it as
Oh yeah.
gospel. He'd come by
You'd
in the
write it
golf
down in your
cart.
notebook.
We got a record. It's 15,632 who have come through. Like, what?
Back
But
in the
it didn't
day.
feel that way. Oh my God, the lines of people that would be like, that was one of my favorite. Let me wrap up the day, and then I'm going to tell one quick story. Okay, so did you say coach? No,
just a player that you wanted to
yeah.
sit in the tent with for 15 minutes, and you knew you were going to come out of there with insight and excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I had my best interviews probably in Bourbonnais with Kyle Long. I have some really good memories of sitting with him there.
He's on my list, but if you ever got Kyle on a day where it was not exuberant Kyle, you'd be like, man, this is not going the direction I want to go with. But when he was good, he was like sensational.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because that was the beauty of Bourbonnais, is you could really get guys, especially in the lunchroom days. You can just get them after lunch and just sit down in the courtyard and just talk. So there was a place called Paul's Place in Kankakee.
Yeah, never went. You guys made that an annual pilgrimage, and
we liked that. It was a little dive. I always loved Brickstone. I never had a problem with Brickstone. I thought that was great. Hibachi was fun. And then you go watch Bob Laguerre and Larry Mayer dominate bags at TJ Donlands later the night. The thing about Bourbonnais, there's an old Bill Simmons used to write mailbags. You remember when he did the mailbags?
Oh yeah.
And as the mailbag ended, he would always kind of there'd be this build up. You get these more obscure questions that were just in his wheelhouse. And the last question, he would be like, "Yep, these are my readers."
Yes.
That was his kicker. I always think about that line when I think about walking into Bourbonnais and seeing people sprint to get a spot for autographs, and watching and hearing. And we get this at Haugh a little bit for sure, but it's just smaller. Just smaller. It was just different. The vibe in Bourbonnais, where you're just away from the city and you had thousands and thousands of people, and the way they just glommed onto players and plays and moments. You kind of in our roles, it was easy to be like, why would anybody sit in the heat for 3 hours to watch practice when it's not their job? And you kind of were like, okay, these are our readers. Yeah. This is kind of why we do what we do for these people who just love this team. And I think that and I was kind of hopeful, Dan. I mean, I'm sure it's not worth the schlep. The nostalgia of me was hopeful the Bears would find a way every year to do a weekend in Bourbonnais.
Right.
Just bring the team there for 2 days, 2 practices. And
logistically difficult. Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. But I remember when they first made this change, I was hopeful. But yeah, it's I always have good memories of covering camps down there.
So I'm going to throw a few things at you that are worth talking about. Did you have children at any point when you were in Bourbonnais?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So the way training camp evolved for me over the years was, when you start having kids and then you have multiple kids, the time that I most miss now that the camp is here in Lake Forest is when you'd finish filing your story, it'd be 4:45 or 5:15, and you had an hour and a half before dinner, and you just go back to the hotel and no one needed you. Right. And you could just put on the TV and sit at the foot of the bed and just lay there without anyone needing you. And I was like, man, I never realized how much I valued that time. I almost want to put my own bunk in the PNC Center Midway and just do that every day at the end of camp. I'll bring a TV, I'll bring my iPad, just sit there just to get that decompression time, right? I really miss that. I'm going to give you a Fairfield Inn story that Rich Campbell still finds hilarious. There was a front desk woman.
Who was that person you mentioned?
Rich Campbell. He used to be on the beat with me. He was probably spent I guess he would have been at every one of those. Yeah, he would have been at every one of those Bourbonnais.
He was tracking the 2019 Kicker Derby.
Oh yeah. Yeah, among other things. Eddie Pinero beat Elliott Fry in that derby, for those who don't remember. There was a woman at the front desk at the Fairfield Inn who, if you remember, the Fairfield Inn would do they would make cookies. It was every Tuesday and Thursday or something, and at 5:00 they'd put out the cookies, right? And you could sometimes come back from practice and you'd smell them cooking. And I had a friendly relationship every time we came in and out of the building, and I came in and they were cooking them one day, and I was like, hey, those chocolate chip cookies smell awesome. And she's like, I could hand deliver you your own batch. And I'm like, really? Like a full tray? She's like, I'm gonna make them for you right now. And she ended up like, I go back to the room, and then like 25 minutes later, I get a knock on my door, and she brought an entire tray of chocolate chip cookies directly to my room. These were the things that you got and the perks you got when you were at a place for 4 consecutive weeks, right? Like you could just make a request for a tray of chocolate chip cookies and it would be granted, which was a wonderful thing. I looked up the name of the hibachi. Kansei Steakhouse never has been called Kansei Steakhouse by anybody who's on the Bears beat. It's called Mall Hibachi because it is the hibachi in the Bourbonnais Mall. And I know you were there many times. I was there many times with you. Tell the folks here on this podcast why that was a special place. And by the way, shout out to Jeff Dickerson, who was one of the ringleaders of Kansei Steakhouse / Mall Hibachi, and really, I think, got the energy flowing in that place.
Well, I was going to say that's what made it special was that Jeff loved it so much and he was just giddy.
And like to a disproportionate level, right? You're like, yeah, like we're going to have fun, but we're going to have extra fun because Jeff is so giddy about it.
Right. I mean, picture it's 2016 and we just had like a long hot practice. John Fox wouldn't tell us anything afterward. And the team doesn't look very good. And it's just been a long day, and you could always count on JD to be like, guys, it doesn't matter. We're going to Mall Hibachi. He'd be like, I don't care what John Fox didn't say. Let's just go enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
And you'd have the sake will be flowing, and
you know the T-shirt, more sake, more happy.
I have a memory of our another dear late friend of ours, Moon Mullen, being at Mall Hibachi with us.
I have a picture of Chris Emma taking the sake out of, they would fill the ketchup bottles with sake, those squeezable ketchup bottles, squirt it into your mouth. There's a great picture of Chris Emma. I think it's kind of splashing off his cheek. Some of it's getting, it is the essence of Mall Hibachi.
What I liked about it too, and this was a training camp thing, was Mall Hibachi brought us all together. We might have been at 5 competing outlets, all trying to get the best story of the day. And for those couple hours, we could just enjoy some Mall Hibachi and complain about, the PR staff and the head coach and, how miserable the team looked. Just talking about some of those middle years that were a little tough, and just enjoy each other's company.
You're at the horseshoe of the hibachi, right? The way it's shaped, and there's a lot. It's packed, and Zach Zaidman was there back in the day, and there's a lot of things happening. Guys trying to catch shrimp in their mouth. My thing with a good hibachi requires over the top slapstick hibachi chefs. Like if you go to a hibachi and it's just a serious, like we're going to cut up your scallops and your steak, and fine, great experience. It's not what a hibachi needs to be. And the chefs at Kansei Steakhouse, Kevin, were the type that you would find in a Jason Segel movie, right? Like just so over the top with the jokes. My favorite one, I think I probably told it before on this podcast, is when they would stack the onions, light them on fire, and they'd say, "What's this?" And you'd say, "A volcano?" And they said, "No, it's an onion." Those are the jokes that you need to carry over in the hibachi to really make it work. That place sang, right? Like that place was a legitimate sang. You also brought up the cafeteria. We used to be able to eat in the cafeteria on an opposite side of players. And then you'd be able to wait out by the bike racks either before you ate or after you ate and talk to people for a long time. That became a problem. Do you remember why that became a problem and why we ultimately got evicted from the cafeteria? I wish I remembered the player.
Oh, gosh. I don't remember the exact reason or situation.
Somebody rolled up to the cafeteria, a player, in a walking boot after hurting their ankle at a practice. And I believe several of us reported that like he left practice and he was seen later in the day with a walking boot on his right foot, right? Like, and that became too much for Foxy. Foxy said, nope. It's August 5th and our week 7 opponent might be able to gain a competitive advantage about knowing that walking boot was on his right foot.
My first ever argument with the Bears was when they took the sandwiches away from us. Because when you went in the cafeteria, as you said, there were 2 lines. The players and coaches and staff went in one line. We went in the other line. It was the same buffet.
You could be standing behind Danny Trevathan, right? Like, or maybe he was already.
And then, he would split off to the right. We'd split off to the left. But when you first walked in, there was a whole sandwich bar, and they would make sandwiches. I thought the sandwiches were pretty good. It was make your own. You go through the line, and you pick your meat and your cheese and everything. And they took the sandwiches away from us. They said you could still eat in the lunchroom, but you cannot get a sandwich. And that was the first time I turned in. It was real sports writer of me to be very upset about them taking the free sandwiches away.
Sandwiches.
I tell this story a lot. So when I got the Bears beat job, my literal first day on the job was, it was probably July 23rd or something, the first day of training camp. And I remember, so I really didn't know anybody. I knew who all the guys, I knew who all these people were, the other writers, but I was kind of alone. And I just remember staying outside the lunchroom, and Jay Cutler starts walking up.
Very
and
nice.
It was very obvious that Jay was just persona non grata. You just didn't address Jay in that situation. Like
Ever.
you just did. Nobody was going to talk to him. Jay Taft, our good friend from Rockford. Again, this is my first time there. It's my first time meeting Jay Taft, who's covered the training camps and the Bears from Rockford. He's wearing his sunglasses. Cutler walks up and he just goes, "Jay, man, how was the summer?" It's just Jay Taft guy. He loves to surf. He just that kind of vibe. And I remember Cutler just kind of sighed at him, gave a little Jay smirk, and then just kept walking to the lunchroom. And that was
not even a return answer.
I think he might have kind of just smiled, and like he wasn't rude, but he didn't stand and like I was thinking about this, Dan. Couldn't you picture, like in the old lunchroom days, if this team went to Bourbonnais, like Caleb would like literally stand just like talk.
He'd probably hold court. Yeah.
He would probably just chat with us like each day outside the lunchroom.
He'd probably talk to you about Love Island somehow, right? Like it would be casual conversation. It would be about anything, right? Like, yeah.
And Love Island's been out of control.
We don't have enough time to get into that. I'll give you two last things before we get out of here. This is getting long. The player that I would like to talk to in the tent after is Eddie Jackson for some reason. Like Eddie was a guy that I just always left. Rich used to have a joke that like I'd come back and I'd be like super energized and excited. And he'd be like, "You talked to Eddie today, didn't you?" Right? Like, cause you just felt like the conversations went well. You learned some things from Eddie. He'd share some insight and some nuggets. So that was always fun in there. Yolks and Berries had a ridiculous skillet with eggs and Euro meat. Like I could not get enough of that when we went over there. And there was a story I did. I actually did it twice down there to kind of break up the grind of camp about odd jobs that players had that like they either didn't like or were just strenuous enough that training camp didn't seem so bad. I was just trying to look this up on my phone and couldn't find it. But you remember running back Sean Drawn. I'm going to have to bring this up on a later episode because he told, first of all, Eddie had given me insight into a job he had at a car dealership while at University of Alabama. And he told me some things. And then he was like, pre-NIL days, he's like, now some of this has got to be off the record, right? Like, I think Eddie Jackson made a lot of money from a car dealership in Tuscaloosa to not really do a lot at the car dealership in Tuscaloosa, which nowadays would be fully on the table. But Sean Drawn, Kev, had a job at Home Depot. And then he detailed the day that he quit the job at Home Depot without telling anybody. They asked him to do something out in the garden center, I think. And he was just like, "I can't do this anymore." He's like, just took my apron off, threw it on the ground in the parking lot, never went back to Home Depot, never even picked up my paycheck from having that job. And that was how bad it was. But it was a really like you'd ask guys about some of those things. And that one, I just remembered like laughing hysterically because I was like, man, this guy had no shame in being like, peace out, Home Depot. I ain't got nothing for you here.
I'm going to tell you what Sean Drone did in week 2 of 2014 because there's something that happened in that 49ers game that always stood out to me when I heard Sean Drone's
he got victimized. They got a punt blocked.
He had a holding call on the opening kickoff that made them have to start the game from the 7-yard line, and then Pat O'Donnell had his punt blocked.
I think he was blocking on the punt block.
Was he the one? Yeah.
I think he might have got victimized there.
Oh, wow. There was one punt later in the game in which the Bears had 3 separate penalties in the same punt. Here's some names for you, Dan. Sean Drone, Sonoris Perry, and John Bostic. All 3 were penalized. on that play.
I guess the moral of the story is, had Phil Emery called the manager at Home Depot, that punt might not have been blocked, right? Like,
Bears won that game though.
a great Brandon Marshall game, and then a
Great Graham
Brandon
Marshall game,
Marshall
great Kyle
post-game
Fuller
press
game.
conference. All right, we got to get out of here. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our audience, or anything else you're really looking forward to at training camp?
If you are listening to this week of July 9th ish, the Athletics 6th annual Bears fan survey is out. So go have your voice heard and fill it out. And Dan, I'm very excited to see who wins the annual "Who is the best Bears quarterback of all time" vote. It changes often. Sometimes it's Jay, sometimes it's Sid Luckman. We'll see who it is this year.
It's got to be Jay. Maybe it's Sid Luckman. McMahon. Anyway, that's Kevin.
The way the votes have changed over the years, even though they haven't been playing football.
That's Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic. He also does the Breaking In podcast, which we talked about at the outset. He is now a repeat guest on the Take the North podcast, and we're going to have him back again before too long. Kev, thanks for joining. Mark Grote is at The Orthodontist, our expert producer, Adam Stadzinski, putting the whole show together. Thank you to everybody for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, smash that like button, and share this with your friends. That's Kevin Fishbain. I'm Dan Wiederer. Great talk. See you out there.